Hey guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Staying Sweet, the podcast. I hope you're all doing well. I'm back in the studio recording some episodes today, and this week's episode is all about skyrocketing your personal brand, leveling up and refining those content pillars, establishing them first and foremost, and putting those things basically to the forefront of your mind. We're kind of wrapping up 2023, which is crazy to think, but we will be indeed thinking about what we're doing to really hone ourselves in, focus, dedicate our time to really nurturing our personal brand and getting ready to start 2024 off with a bang. I've got lots of episodes coming on the podcast ready for that sort of countdown to New Year, focusing on things like vision boards and attracting things into your life, refining your personal brand, which is what today's episode is about. And that really comes down to finding your why and finding your purpose behind your personal brand. Is your personal brand an extension of your business? Is it part of your kind of consumer journey? Are you trying to navigate and share your service? For example, a photography business. Are you wanting to kind of showcase the behind the scenes of what it's like to be a photographer and working with clients and things like that? Those sorts of things are going to be the focus for today's episode. So really, I like to simplify it and keep it to 3 content pillars. I try not to overcomplicate things, which is kind of ironic because it's something that I'm looking at within my business, streamlining things that no longer align or I don't have time for anymore, and working out what those 3 content pillars are within all areas of my business. So my podcast really has inspired me across all my other platforms to really hone my focus and work on the women in business angle. So that is my top content pillar. My second is my work as a journalist and my work in travel and sort of that content stream, which is all about interviewing people, working in travel, working as a travel journalist. So that really is highlighted in my content. And then the other element is my sort of fashion sense and lifestyle. It's probably my weakest pillar, and it's something that I'm definitely going to reconsider for next year, whether I want to continue kind of sharing like outfits and styling. But it is part of my brand DNA, and really sort of where I started was with a fashion blog. So I feel like it's always been streamlined in my content, but it's whether it still aligns with me anymore. That is really the sort of questions that I'm asking myself lately, and I'm really enjoying the women in business focus, and I found I'm really connecting with the people that I'm meant to be connecting with. So if you're thinking about doing the same thing, or you're thinking that something that you're already doing right now in your business or in your content doesn't really align with you anymore, think about why that is, why you might be having those teething problems or those issues with coming up with content ideas and motivation to create content. I know I really saw a dip in my love for fashion content when I couldn't be bothered to do YouTube videos anymore, showing hauls and sharing styling videos, and it really made me realize, okay, I don't have to do those things. Like, why was I forcing myself to do that? Why was I forcing myself to be a fashion influencer or a fashion creator? And actually, it's not what lights me up. It may have done at a point in time, and that's fine, but it no longer serves me and it's no longer part of my brand identity. So actually just honouring it and being accepting and being willing to let go of things that you maybe were first introduced to. I feel like lots of people start out in one area, and as they grow their brand and their business, they pivot. And, you know, that could be said for lots of different businesses. It could be said for lots of different creators. You know, you could look at someone, for example, like Lydia Millen. When she first started as a creator, she was a fitness influencer, and you would not see fitness influencing on her page today. She is an influencer, a very good example of someone who has completely pivoted their personal brand. She focuses on wellness and a country lifestyle, living in the country. That wellness angle being very loosely, it's not surrounded around fitness, it's actually surrounded around the country lifestyle, and that's incredibly niche. And, you know, as she's evolved and grown her business, she's really been able to step into that version of herself, and her content has really mirrored that. She's been very strategic about rebranding herself. Everything is streamlined, from her Instagram stories to her reels, her collaborations. She has done it all, and it's not been something that she's done in a wishy-washy way. She's gone in and she's decided, right, this is the direction of my business now. And I think that's what you really need to focus on when you're wanting to skyrocket that personal brand that you've created. If something is no longer aligning and it's feeling like there's a lot of resistance and there's not a lot of productivity, there's not a lot of motivation and passion behind those things anymore, consider, where you could pivot to. And with that in mind, you shouldn't also compare yourself and get into that state of comparison paralysis, this feeling that like everyone else is doing different things, and you open things like TikTok and you're overwhelmed. You're seeing people do story time style videos and get ready with me's, and then you're seeing people doing sort of sing-alongs and lip syncing to stuff, and it's growing their platform. I think the key really is to focus on things that light you up and make you happy. For me, I don't really enjoy get ready with me content. I love to watch it occasionally, not always, but I much prefer creating content that is, my podcast. I'm happy to sit here all day, every day, and record and edit and talk about business and interview people who are inspiring. So finding those things that don't give you identity paralysis and, make you procrastinate your entire existence. Those are the things that you're going to want to focus on and hone in and really think about for the new year. So whatever you do, whatever you create, whatever niche you have the power to create that content, and you can write your own work schedule. You don't have to be the person that wakes up and vlogs their entire day if you don't want to. You don't have to be a daily vlogger. You could be someone who picks up the camera and talks about their experience in their job or behind the scenes, but it doesn't have to be a vlog style. It could be something completely different. It could be sort of documentary focus. You could make it completely your own. You could really do anything. So I think with that being said, you have to consider your personal brand as a brand strategy, and it's the art of subtle branding, really. And all these things that you could be using. So for example, Instagram, you could really think about all the components that go into a strong Instagram personal brand. And that's anything from the content you post, whether you post carousels, reels, static posts, consistently showing up in that same format really helps align and create that personal brand that is recognizable. If you're somebody who is very famous on their page for having quotes, or very famous for having a particular type of edit, start working with those to your advantage, and don't be afraid to kind of do something a bit different. If it's something you've not seen people doing, still do it. Make it work. Make it part of your brand identity, because at the end of the day, all these things build and kind of develop your personal brand story. I know Instagram stories is a really good example of one. If you're someone that shows up every day and does like a chatty Monday where you talk with a cup of coffee and it's the same mug that you use every Monday, and you show up at like 8 a.m. and you do the same spiel every single Monday, that consistently showing up and being present in the same sort of consistent content format can be really beneficial to you. Some people like Lydia Millen, off the top of my head, she is somebody who has identified that she wants to have a very elegant Instagram story experience. So she has lots of greens and like cursive fonts used, and she's got embossing on her Instagram stories. So she's got monogramming, she's got her initials on everything. Everything is branded and it's so carefully thought out. And those little things that you focus on become the bigger picture of your personal brand. So that's really how you can establish and skyrocket your personal brand from an aesthetics point of view. From a more community-based point of view, you really need to be thinking about how you can communicate your values across to people to build that personal network, whether that be on Instagram, LinkedIn, your own Facebook group or platform. Having that visibility where your community connects and engages together is where you're going to also see that skyrocketing success. So being an active community member yourself, engaging with content that is already existing or other creators are doing, but kind of sit in your niche or work in alignment with you. So for example, I think it's a really good thing for me to do to engage on other podcasts' Instagram pages and exchange the conversation. I'm also a very active commenter on platforms like Spotify for podcasters or which previously was Anchor, by the way, which is a hosting platform for podcasting, and some other things like the podcast show London. I still engage with all their content throughout the year so that people know that I'm showing up, and I'm also connecting with other like-minded people in that space. So add the value there, add the value in the communities that you're building, and don't be afraid to take space in those communities as well. I also want you to consider how you might want to stand out in maybe a saturated market. So if you're someone who's thinking, I really want to be a fashion creator, there is still space for you, but you really have to hone, and ironically, you have to hone in your niche, but broaden your possibilities and broaden your field really of vision. Don't be so focused and like hyper focused on what everyone else is doing and kind of pigeonhole yourself into that one position. You could really carve out a niche for yourself, and it can only really be done when you, step into that moment of vulnerability and authenticity, and give yourself the space to communicate your vision for yourself, your vision for your positioning in the market. I also think niching down enables you to find your community much faster than appealing to lots of different people, and maybe your dream audience member or your dream listener or watcher or follower can find you, but then is a bit confused because 2 posts later you're posting something about lifestyle. And that was something that I really worked out quite quickly. And I feel like on my podcast, it's been the quickest identifier of, okay, I need to have a niche here. Like, I need to stop being so broad. And as soon as I gave myself the tagline for entrepreneurial women leveling up their personal brand, my whole understanding of my podcast changed. I suddenly knew what I was creating podcast content about. I was able to find people who wanted content from me because I had created that niche for myself. And then in doing so, in labeling myself with that tagline, I've been able to find people, and people have been able to find me and say, do you know what, I've got a business, or I'm a female founder and I really want to talk on this podcast. So it's so much easier for potential people working with you and also your community in finding you if you're identifiable by a niche or a tagline or something that just enables someone to find out quickly what you're about without having to do, an investigative journalism to work out, are they a lifestyle creator? Are they a fashion creator? I feel like I'm calling myself out here, but that is what my Instagram is, my personal Instagram at alicelucybradley. That Instagram is away with the fairies right now, and I will be working on who I'm going to become on that platform. I think I want to kind of focus on the journalism aspect and the podcasting aspect and showcase more of that on my social media and on that personal brand page, because everything else is just kind of fluffy. And the travel stuff's great and I love doing it and I love kind of showing up on there, but sometimes when I'm traveling back to back it can be a bit confusing. People might think, is she trying to be a travel influencer? But actually what I'm doing is I'm working as a journalist and as a travel journalist, so I need to sit down and work that out. So you and me both, we will both be doing this together. What can you be doing again, and just to kind of round this out, in finding out your personal brand and kind of narrowing it down? I think the easiest way to do that is with boundaries in your business and in your personal branding portfolio. If something doesn't hit one of those content pillars, it's not worth even showing or mentioning or talking about, because without those boundaries, it's going to be very hard for you to know what you're communicating and what you're getting across. Business boundaries do so much. And again, with my podcast, I've realized, okay, I could have, and this is something that I'm still deliberating over, but I could have, and I have had these amazing male business founders reaching out saying, I want to come on the podcast, I want to talk on here. And I love the idea of it, but I keep having to remind myself, is that on brand, or could I do something else with that contact or that opportunity? Because does it really align with the whole format of this show. So sometimes opportunities will present themselves and you have to work out whether they are in line with your business or not, or are in line with your personal brand. Another big thing I found sort of growing my socials when I was fashion influencing is I was very heavily focused on accepting collaborations, and what that did early on was open me up to all sorts of brands that I would hand on heart and in all honesty say I would never work with them again. I'm not going to name names, but when you're working with brands that have, you know, little to no quality or treat their employees with disrespect and unsafe work conditions, you know, all those things, when you're first starting out, you kind of just like accept whatever's coming in and whatever's going. But as you grow and as you develop, you're given more opportunities, so you can say no. But I would say my biggest piece of advice would be to not sell yourself out early on, because it could potentially bite you on the bum. If you're someone that's, you know, going to have strict morals and values within your business and your personal brand, don't kind of agree to something that doesn't align with you just because it's bringing in a fat paycheck or it's giving you brand exposure or it's your first collab. Really think about brands that you could be working with that align in your favor. I think finally, just to sort of wrap up and finish up, I would say hone those 3 pillars, work on who you're going to be and show up as, and think about how you can really create a community with your personal brand and who those people are going to be. Almost write down the criteria of those people. So, for example, with my podcast, I've really looked at the data now that I've got the data. But when I first started my podcast, I thought, well, anyone could be listening to this. I don't really know who's tuning in or who's going to be interested. But now I have a real understanding of my target demographic. It's enabled me to, you know, hone in my message and my guests on this podcast, and in doing that I've kind of developed a formula now. It's very formulaic. It's easy for me to create content because I know where the podcast is going. But other areas of my life, like my personal Instagram, a little bit more tricky. So yeah, I feel like we're all doing this. We're all kind of coming up with ways that we can really skyrocket our personal brand, and I think the only way you can truly do it successfully is trial and error, trying things, being open to try things, but at the same time not kind of spreading yourself too thin and trying to be a bit of everything that's cool right now. You know, Get Ready With Me is the next Alex Earls. Like, you don't need to be the next Alex Earl. You need to be yourself, and you need to be creating content that is in alignment with your personal brand. So that is what I'm going to leave you with today. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and it gave you some food for thought. If you are working on your personal brand, you've got this. You can drop me a message over on Instagram. Let me know any questions, or if you need some extra guidance, just follow me on @Staying Sweet Podcast. As always, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, please give a like and a comment, and please be subscribed because that really helps me out. And also, if you're listening on any podcast streaming platforms, I would really appreciate a rate and review because it just allows me to continue doing what I love and to grow this podcast and get more people listening and watching. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I will see you guys next week. Stay sweet.